Hey, what is up, guys? JTX here. Thought I'd make a video today talking about Diablo 4 and what I've been doing in the last couple weeks. So I've been playing Diablo 4 on and off for the last couple weeks just to get a feel of the game. My character's hit level 75 now. Yeah, 75. I've been playing a bow-based rogue build. Just trying to give my thoughts quickly on what I think about Diablo 4 and I guess how it compares to Path of Exile and I guess the future of where I see the game being. So to get it out of the way, do I think this game is going to be like the PoE killer? This is going to be the new generation of ARPGs? Uh, Definitively, no. I think Diablo 4 and PoE both have their own niches for their audiences. I think that both can exist in a world where there are different things you want from both, but I definitely wouldn't say that this is something that can replace PoE. In terms of whether I like the game, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great ARPG. It's really different to PoE. It's been really fun to just kind of experience a brand new ARPG for the first time in like I don't know like 10 years, 11 years. And I think if you do have the chance, my ultimate recommendation is yeah, check it out. I know the game can be pricey, definitely in different regions, but I feel like maybe in the future, if there is a sale or you guys just really do want to check it out, I think the price is definitely worth playing. I'll go into some of my thoughts now, just from what I've noticed, kind of doing the end game content and also the leveling process. Uh, what Diablo 4 does really well, I think, is just the whole I guess the world building feels really nice. The story feels obviously really nice because it is a Diablo game. Um, this is something that Blizzard's always done very well in the Diablo games. The game itself is excellent as a standalone like RPG experience. I think it's worth it just to, I guess, for the content you get from starting from zero all the way up to 50 for finishing the campaign. Just being able to experience all the zones, the story, the environments. I think all of that's done fantastically well. It's very visually appealing for the eyes. By far, it's the best looking ARPG out there at the moment. In terms of the combat itself and gameplay, I think combat does feel quite satisfying. It has weight to all the actions you do. It's a lot less, a lot different to how the end game of PoE looks, which is like very zoomy and very explodey and like pretty much min-maxing your build to go as fast as you can and do as much damage as you can. In Diablo, when you get to higher level content, you're really focusing on making your character well rounded, so you have good defenses, good offenses, and then being able to just like kind of push your character incrementally instead of like I guess trying to like speed map or like like blow up screens at a time. Two different I think two different places where the games go. So one of the things I guess one of the criticisms I do have for Diablo 4 is its build diversity. In PoE, it's ridiculous amount of skills, like 100, 200 skills that you can all make a build around, and then you have uniques that make it even more potential builds. In Diablo 4, I think the build diversity itself is quite limited because each skill, each class only has 4 to 5 core skills that you can build around. And around those core skills, there are definitely some core skills that are better than others. So you kind of feel like you're missing out if you're not playing like the most meta or the strongest core skill. With that being said, I have seen that the people, build creators and content creators, they're trying out new and wacky builds. Look, all of them seem really promising, but I think the big issue is when you get to the super end game content, like tier 4 plus, level 100 plus, like trying to fight Uber Lilith, it feels like the amount of or the diversity of builds really narrowed down to a certain pool for each class. So that's what I would like to see in the future, maybe with the addition of more unique items, set items, that more playstyles and builds are viable. Right now, it feels like a lot of players are pigeonholed into a certain type of playstyle. So even for my character, I'm playing a bow rogue, which is not ideal compared to like the Twirling Blades, the most meta build done by Rudy Joe, and like the melee, like Death Trap, Poison Trap. Um, but I think it's been really fun just to play something that appeals to you. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, you can make most builds viable, but pushing them to the very end game, that becomes more of a question of am I really running the most meta or best setup for the end game? I'll quickly talk about how I guess some of the specific endgame systems work in Diablo 4. So after you hit level 50, you get access to something called Nightmare Dungeons. I would say this is the equivalent of maps in PoE, where you have different tiers of dungeons you can enter, and you get pretty much like, we call them glyphs, I believe. Oh, it's sigils. We call them sigils. So sigils are essentially maps where you right click and then it turns the dungeon already in the world map. So if you look at the world, map, see like there's dungeons everywhere. A sigil will just turn a dungeon into, I guess, a more powerful version of that dungeon by putting modifiers onto it. So it essentially makes dungeons into like maps, so like higher tier maps. That's how the endgame progression system works, where you'll be constantly running sigils to level up your character, get better gear, and also your glyphs. So what are glyphs? So to understand glyphs, we have to go into the Paragon board. So by default, when you get to level 50, you have just a regular skill tree where you get your skills and like your generic passive points. Your Paragon tree is something definitely closer to PoE, where it's like your endgame skill tree, where it's a lot more diverse in how you can build it. What glyphs are kind of like similar to sockets, like or jewels in your passive tree in PoE. You can socket in specific runes that give extra effect to your character based on the stats in the radius. Think of like timeless jewels. The whole point of running endgame Nightmare Dungeons is to level up your glyphs. So your glyphs get stronger over time. So initially they start out at a smaller radius, but when you smaller radius, and when you level them up, they cover a bigger radius. So and then the radius, and then how much stats within the radius affects how strong the effect is. So you level up your glyphs, and then the effect gets stronger and stronger and stronger. That's kind of like how you scale endgame characters. Obviously, also getting Paragon points. So Paragon points are just points you get after level 50. You don't get any more skill points for your main skill. You get Paragon points. So these are just like passive points that give like extra effects like intelligence, extra fizz, extra damage, crit damage, cooldown reduction. You get 4 Paragon points per level. So between 50 to 100, you'll get 200 Paragon points. And then you get, this is pretty much your endgame skill tree system, where it's like a Paragon board. Paragon boards are essentially skill trees that you can kind of attach to each other. Loosely think of like maybe cluster jewels. When you get enough Paragon points, you can go to like board attachment gate. Then you can attach another Paragon board here, and then you can allocate more skill points within that tree. So most builds I've noticed have 4 to 5 Paragon boards. That's how many boards your Paragon points kind of allow for. And they'll have different effects that you can interact with your build. So I think that's a really, really cool aspect of Diablo 4. There's a lot of customization possible with the Paragon system. I think definitely more in-depth than the Diablo 3 system. In terms of crafting gear, Diablo 4 is definitely more of like an SSF system, where trading does exist, but it's very, very rudimentary. Like think like PoE forum trading, or like you have to go on Discord to manually list items. There's no integrated like trading house or auction house for you to list items and search for items easily. So essentially think of it like it's almost like you're playing SSF. All the gear that you do find, you're going to be trying to upgrade it and make it better for your character. So how does gear crafting actually work? So let's say you pick up an item. So you notice how there's 4 roles on this, or 4 affixes on the item, and notice that one of them is blue. Say it's a little blue icon next to it. So that is the mod that I re-rolled. So you're able to re-roll a single mod on an item while the other mods stay the same. You can't re-roll the other mods after you've re-rolled the mod you've chosen. You can keep re-rolling this mod, but it gets progressively more expensive. But you can re-roll for like a good roll. So ideally, you're picking up items with 3 decent rolls, and then the 4th roll you manually do it yourself until you get a good roll. And how the tier system works for like legendary, unique, or normal rare items is most of the time what you're going to be doing is you're going to pick up a rare item with 3 decent rolls, then you'll keep rolling until you get a 4th decent roll, and then you slam a aspect onto it, which turns it into a legendary item. Aspects are essentially powerful effects you can add on to your gear. So like for example, this one gives extra attack speed to my basic auto attack. This one gives me more damage while I have a shield active. And then when you add that to a rare item, it turns the item into a legendary item. And that's kind of how like most people will gear their character. Then beyond legendary items, you have items that are unique. So like this. So unique items are like similar to PoE. they will always roll the same mods. The roll range obviously will change, but you can't change any of the mods on a unique item. They'll always have the same mods, just different values on them. Most of the time, I've noticed that players will probably run 1 or 2 uniques that synergize with their class, and the rest of the gear is all legendary. Legendary being gear that has their own customizable aspects on it. So, like, most builds will have a synergistic combo with all the aspects they put on. In terms of the crafting system, I think it's great. It's a great foundation. It's not too complicated for newer players to get into, but it has enough, I guess, endgame potential that you can spend a lot of currency into trying to get a perfect piece of item or perfect piece of gear. And obviously, the socketing system is just pretty simple. You add items can have dual socketed in, and they give extra effects. So most of the time, people just grab like damage reduction while like CCs while control impaired, and critical damage to vulnerable enemies. Like that's pretty much the bread and butter for most dual sockets. Nothing too crazy there. Would I recommend this game to a PoE player? I think the answer is I would recommend this game to most people that enjoy dungeon like ARPG games, similar to like maybe like Torchlight, Diablo 3, Molson, or Last Epoch. Would I particularly recommend it to PoE players? Maybe not, because it's a little bit different to the playstyle you're expecting. It's definitely closer to an MMO RPG compared to like an ARPG like PoE. I also kind of get the comparison that it is similar to a game like Guild Wars 2, because the map is actually really massive and there's incentives to exploring all parts of the map and getting challenges done, getting quests done, getting the 100% world completion to make your character more powerful. That's just kind of a thing I've noticed with the game itself, that it did remind me a bit of Guild Wars 2 in terms of like the completion aspect of the map. Would I recommend this game? Yeah, to an average player, yes. I highly recommend playing. I really recommend playing this, especially with friends. And even for PoE players, I think this game does party play a lot better than PoE does. You can definitely have fun with friends in dungeons, and it doesn't feel like you're like a PoE where like the fastest player with the strongest build dictates the speed of the map, and everyone else is just following around. I think at high level, doing dungeons with friends is really really fun. I think it's really fun. Just like getting a couple people together and just blasting through dungeons together, because everyone feels like they are contributing to the fight, and it feels like your combat has weight compared to like just speed blitzing everything. So that's kind of what I think works like pretty well with the game. Like it does feel combat feels great, party play feels good, graphics are awesome, story is awesome. But I'll get into I think what doesn't work so well for this game. So I think what people have said that Diablo 4 has created a really really good template for them to work on. So a very very good clean slate that they can build from. It's excellent in its current state as launch. There's a lot of potential for you to add extra systems in. However, noting this, Blizzard historically has not added a lot of complexity in their game systems, particularly Diablo 3, with seasons and different leagues. It could be different in Diablo 4, hopefully, but until we see it, it's going to be a mystery. What I think doesn't work so well in this game is because of the, I guess, the almost SSF nature of it, your gear progression will eventually slow down. You will find most of the gear you have with like 3 or 4 decent rolls, and then you probably won't upgrade it for a really long time. So that kind of makes a loot less exciting towards the end game, because you're not going to find a piece of gear that's going to be better than your current gear. In PoE, it doesn't matter if you don't find a piece of gear better than your current gear. You might find a piece of gear that's really good for someone else, and you can sell it, and then you can buy your own piece of gear. So there is kind of like a progression system that you can work towards, like an end goal. In this game, it's almost like kind of like a lottery, where like, there's a very low chance I might get an item that's a slightly more of an upgrade for my build. Great. So your gear progression will slow down. I think that might be kind of like a downside for like a lot of players, because they'll feel like, my progression's kind of stopped. My build isn't really getting much stronger outside of me trying to get more levels and doing trying to get my Paragon up or getting my Glyphs up. So that can kind of be like feel like a little barrier for players, because you don't really feel like you're getting any more meaningful loot. The other thing I think is the repetitive nature of dungeons. It's very similar to mapping. I think PoE players kind of sport for choice when it comes to mapping, because we can add so many mechanics onto the map to make it feel different, and it can be very different like between maps. A lot of things you can do on a map, and obviously you're much faster in PoE compared to this game. So with those factors combined, Diablo 4 have neither of those things, you're not going to have a lot of drastically different content. Your content's going to be essentially the same, copy-paste, bread and butter for all the dungeons, and you're not clearing them like at a lightning fast pace. So it does take like maybe like 4 or 5 minutes, 6 minutes to clear a dungeon on average. I think that kind of contributes to like the repetitive nature, that you're going to be chaining like 20, 30, 40 dungeons just to level up your glyphs a little bit. And then especially when you hit higher levels, like there's not as much incentive anymore for like your Paragon points, because you're kind of hitting the point where you've maxed out your character. Like at that point, you're just looking for gear. And like I said, it's going to be very hard to find better gear if your character is being maxed. I think those two points, like the repetitive nature of the dungeons and also the gear progression, those might be a turn off for players looking to grind the game at the end game. Noting that PoE has a similar system, but obviously there's a lot more tangible progression, and also the content is very diverse from what we have. But obviously PoE's had like 5, 6, 7 years of content updates, so can't really compare it at the moment. But I think in its current state, the end game has a really, really good foundation for Blizzard to build on, and there's a lot of potential for them to add a lot more content to make it, I guess, a lot more interesting for for players reaching that content. That being said, yeah, I think I've enjoyed playing the game quite a bit. I'll probably be making like a couple videos on what I found out in Diablo 4, because there are some interesting things that I found, especially tricks that I wish I knew a bit earlier. But I think the long-term conclusion is this will be a great game to play when a season does come out, especially if the season looks interesting, similar to like a PoE League. And hopefully you can alternate them between like a PoE League and a Diablo 4 season. Because I think, yeah, this game's awesome to play and blast with friends. It's very I think it's just like pretty much mindless, like pure raw entertainment. I think the build aspect of it is, unless you're like a content creator or someone that really likes theory crafting, you're most likely going to be following someone else's build. So, and those builds will work. So you'll probably have a good time playing other people's builds and getting to the end game. But it kind of will lose its appeal eventually, because the diversity, unless there's a major shakeup in terms of like skills or unique items, it might feel like you're playing the same thing every single like season. So we'll see how Blizzard manages that. But I would definitely recommend this game for if you're looking for a different change of pace. I don't think this is going to be like a PoE replacement, but I do think it is a awesome game for its own category, and I think Blizzard have created a really, really good template or base for them to further expand on. If you enjoyed this the video, I really appreciate if you drop a like or comment, subscribe, anything that you feel. And if you've been trying the game, if you've been liking it, really happy to hear from you guys as well. I do have some news that I will be going to Exilecon this July, so really looking forward to making some content there to share with you guys. There will be more PoE teasers and trailers being dropped, I think, within the next couple of weeks, so hopefully I'll be able to create some content regarding that as well. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.